I believe that is my blinking red light that we are live. How's it going? Nate Mumford, Director of Sales Engineering here at RCS. It is Thursday. Oh, what day is it? April 16th. Thursday, April 16th, day after, I believe it's tax day. As you know, we're doing this part of our Q&A series and remote workflows. Very, very special Facebook Live today. We're joined by our CTO and EVP of Development Technologies and all that good stuff. Chip Jellison is here, who's waving over there. We have a really, really cool Facebook Live today for you. We're going to essentially talk about Zetta Cloud, Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery, and really talk about kind of the future of kind of radio automation. And don't forget, this is a Facebook Live. We are live. So if you want to get your questions in for Chip, which is just a great resource, so now it's time to do it. You want to comment down below over there. You can always email us too at live, L-I-V-E, at rcsworks.com. Or if you want to direct message us, I have that up here as well. But multiple ways to reach out to us and to Chip. And again, we're going to be here probably for hopefully till about 12 o'clock Eastern time. So we're very, very excited for this. A couple housekeeping things to get out of the way. As you know, we're doing this every single week for the foreseeable future. I hope you and your family are all healthy and safe. So we're going to do probably one on Monday or Tuesday. That's the first half of the week. That's our floating session. And then we have every Thursday at 11 a.m. All those times are Eastern. We will let you know on Facebook with events and all those links for reminders, and all that good stuff. Just reminding you, if you are talking about remote workflows and concepts, if you're not using Zetta to Go just yet, or you're interested in Zetta Cloud, what you're about to see today, and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery, we do have a special going on right now where we're offering a free Zetta to Go license with every Zetta Cloud disaster recovery package, which is a really, really cool deal. Remember, Zetta to Go is like a seat. So you can have multiple users accessing that one seat. So it's a really, really cool thing. You want more information? Let me know. But without further ado, I thought I would throw it over to Chip and begin the concept and the conversation about Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. And again, any questions you want, I will facilitate questions with Chip through the entire hour. And how's it going, Chip? Good morning.
Good. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate you putting these things together. They're really entertaining, they're informative, they're fun.
I sure want to use the word entertaining. That's a stretch.
And this is sort of the week. I mean, we were meant to be getting on planes and going to Vegas and and all of that. And so it's my one time a year I get to sort of get face to face with clients and talk about this very stuff that you and I are going to talk about. So in lieu of being able to do it in person, I guess can be online here and do that and just kind of share what we've been working on. I don't know, where do you want to start, Nate?
So how do we talk about the kind of where RCS and our approach on how and why we started with Zetta Cloud?
Sure. Well, the RCS has had an interesting sort of growth pattern. So, originally very strong scheduling company. We merged a company that was strong in play out into the company and became strong in scheduling and play out, and did the same thing with traffic. And last year, or I guess a couple of years ago, I spoke with our president, Philippe Generali, and we were trying to get a handle on getting started with cloud. We knew that it was important to start considering this, and it was just difficult to get going. And so we struck upon something a little out of the blue. I moved, my wife and I, to Austin, where tech talent is abundant. And hired a cloud architect, and I taught him how radio works. And then we started adding to the team, and basically took the play out components from Zetta and brought them into a container within AWS. We picked AWS just because there's a pretty broad community there. Not everything we're doing is, as a matter of fact, very little of what we're doing is tied specifically to AWS. The whole thing could move to a dedicated data center or to Google or Azure if we wanted to. But the point is, we took the Zeta, this code, which at the time was 12 years old, so pretty rock solid Zeta playout code, put it into a container, and then built a cloud system around that. So it was important to me. I had talked to some folks, and there's this notion in cloud called lift and shift, and it's basically taking your old tired application and putting it into a container, because you can do that, or put it into a VM. And basically it's the same old code architected the same way. That's not the approach I wanted to do. It would have been easier probably in some respects, but it would have been very, very limiting. So we struck about building this ground up cloud application. So when we talk about launching a station, it's like going down to the store and buying a computer and putting the Zeta software on it and attaching it to your database, and then putting a sound card in it and doing all that. All of that stuff is the equivalent of going into Zeta Cloud and pushing the deploy option here. It automatically goes out in the background. It provisions your compute. It assigns all the streaming stuff that you need in order to get it to the Revma streaming platform, and then you're done. I have witnessed a client of ours go from imagining a station to having it launched and streaming in 30 minutes or less.
Wow.
I mean, including getting the library in there. So in that particular case, they have a corporate library that basically all we need is just the ID of the song, and they can schedule an entire day, and as it needs it, it just pulls the songs from their library, so they don't have any manual upload time. And so they, a dozen station IDs, and they're up and running. And then they move on to the next thing. So a lot of what we've been working on in the last couple of years has been bringing over a lot of the Zeta functionality. But I'm frequently asked sort of is Zeta Cloud, when will Zeta Cloud be a replacement for Zeta? And I think it's it's the wrong way to be thinking about this, really. I think if you've got Zeta, you should be thinking, or could be thinking about Zeta Cloud being an extension of your Zeta system into the cloud. And there's some workloads, and it's just like everything else, right?
Yeah.
So for some things you want to have full on Excel spreadsheet, you're doing some mad stuff, or it's, data that you just want on your local desktop. And then there's stuff that you want to share, and, the workflows are better just in the Excel, just talking about Excel, online, there's workflows that make sense online and some that make sense locally. And practically every application these days are like that. There's some workflows that make sense to not have in the cloud, and some that make sense in the cloud. And I think more and more there's going to be more workflows and workloads that make sense to be in the cloud, because it's just easier.
Yeah.
Instead of having 180, discrete, basically data centers for all your, groups. If you've got 180, markets, that all have to be interconnected, and you share data. Imagine having all of those stations and markets in one database and sharing. There's no site to site sending of anything. It's all just in here. But I recognize it's a bit early on this, so you're not going to have that comfort level. It's like the old days, trying to convince somebody that had always used, either vinyl and carts or CDs and carts, that a playout system could help them. They're like, no, I need to touch what I'm playing, and some stations were, it took longer to get comfortable with the fact that a computer could actually help them make better sounding radio, and they can still put their finger on it. They can still do everything to create that final output. All it does is just it helps make it easier. So it's a nice tool to help make it easier, but more consistent to what you want it to do. So, if you're doing carts and CDs and somebody distracts you, and you don't get the song started when you thought you were going to get it started, then your timing might be off. But if the computer is set up with all the information you need in order to do the thing, and you can just focus on what's going into the microphone, then you can be more focused, more prepared. It just helps you. So just imagine all of that now pushed into the cloud. There's a trust level that we have to establish, with the product. I guess that was a long answer. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, it was great. It was fantastic. If you know me, I'm very long-winded, so I was just paying attention. I always say, too, in regards to one of the things when I have users talk about Zetta2Go and Zetta proper, is I always say that Zetta2Go is a user. It's to enhance the user experience, not replace the user experience with Zetta proper. And I think that's kind of a good way right now where we are in the world of Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery is, we're that's where the end game is. We're not necessarily there yet, but there is some functionality there that will definitely make your lives easier in regards to the cloud layout. Before I forget, too, so I want to give out a couple shout outs for people checking on Facebook. Hi to Scott. Hello, Scott. Raul. Stan checked in as well, our Stan. Also, Adam for checking in on Facebook as well. If you guys do have comments, feel free to comment belowhand. If you have any questions for Chip, throw them away. I'll answer them here and there as we talk about Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. If you're just tuning in right now, we're really, really excited. Chip Jellison's here. He's our CTO of RCS and also one of the creators of Zetta Cloud. So we kind of talked about, what led us as RCS as a company to Zetta Cloud. Before we dive into some of the really cool features, and by the way, we have some really, as Chip was saying, this was supposed to be NAB. We have some really cool features that we're trying to showcase for NAB, so we'll kind of do some hints here and there throughout the Facebook Live. So before we get into kind of the dive into Zetta Cloud, let's just kind of briefly talk about, if you can, kind of what the timeline is, what we're expecting in regards to we'll just say, how about to the end of the year in regards to Zetta Cloud, like maybe either some features or some kind of where we see ourselves in quarter 4 for Zetta Cloud.
Sure. So, when we set about to do this, we wanted to create an architecture that we could build on. And one of the early things that we did, way before, COVID-19 or anything like that is, and it was sort of, I don't know if it was in response to, but it was certainly in the environment of, CryptoLocker and things like that. We pivoted the message for what we were building, and we're able to leverage stuff that was already ready and all of that to, again, sort of extending Zetta into Zetta Cloud. But, the whole disaster recovery thing was like a good win for us and for our clients, so that, and I know that you've covered it, ad nauseum here, but it's, it's good to sort of keep talking about, because it really does give you a copy of your entire database and audio assets and schedule and the whole thing in the cloud, untouchable, by, these things that are destroying your on-prem systems, because, what gets copied into Zetta Cloud is only things that Zetta itself is updating. So we've gotten a lot of that stuff going. One big extension that's coming very soon, we just finished the APIs for it in Zetta Cloud. And it's probably important to note that everything that we've done in Zetta Cloud is through API. So everything's decoupled, which is a big word in cloud. Basically, it's not one big application. Like if you take a look at NextGen, it's one big application that does everything that NextGen can do. So we've got a completely decoupled system with APIs. Anyway, we created these APIs that will allow Zetta to receive. So everything we've done so far has been pushing from Zetta into Zetta Cloud, and then being able to pull certain things back out. The database can be restored from the cloud. But one thing that we had talked about last year, and just we hadn't gotten around to it, we had a couple of client things that we needed to knock off, so we did those. But as soon as everything started getting locked down, I spoke with Martin Blazek, our product manager of Zetta, and we set about a new program within Zetta to to be able to pull recorded voice tracks out of Zetta Cloud, essentially making, if you've got the Zetta Cloud connection going, you can now, as soon as we get everything connected up and done, you can use Zetta Cloud as a voice tracking portal. So you've got your entire schedule, you've got your audio, you just go, you securely sign into Zetta, pick your station, do your voice tracks, and those will land back in your Zetta. No VPNs, no, port forwarding or anything on your router. I mean, I hate VPN. I know that IT administrators hate VPN for a variety of reasons. It's just like one more step. So this is literally just a web page portal. You can go in, get to your station, record your voice tracks securely, and know that those voice tracks are going to land back in Zetta and air.
Which is
so
really
that's
cool.
Very, very soon. The code's being worked on now. Like I said, the Zetta Cloud part's done. So those are things that we're working on. The other thing that we're working on, you can see this is not in production. So if you're a user of Zetta Cloud and you're saying, what are some of these things I'm seeing? You're seeing our dev environment, which is where the developers prove their code out before it goes to our staging environment, which is where I really look at things, and we have our QA team working out of as well. So you're going to see, and then after staging, we get everything proven, and then we push it to production where users get to use it. But so you're seeing a lot of early stuff here. One of the things that is coming very soon is you may have heard some of our offices talking about this new thing that we're working on. It's basically a collaboration tool within our Revma streaming platform that can connect to Zetta and Zetta Cloud. So Zetta 4.19.2, I believe, is going to support it. And we just added support for this in the on-air screen in Zetta Cloud. And basically what it is it's two components. One is a collaboration tool in Revma that I can, if I move this thing, it's a pretty simple screen so that it's not cluttered. But what you can do is you can go live and add so your staff can sign in securely and be a part of this. Or if you have a guest that you want to bring in, you simply give them this link. They sign into that link, and then they're in this lobby where you can bring them in and make them part of your program. And the output is a low latency stream, which in Zetta Cloud can be brought into the mixture of your stream that you're creating just simply by going live. And so I've clicked the button, and what happens is it brings that stream into the mix of the output. So, as a host, you would be working over here, and you'd have it either not live or muted. And then when you're ready to talk, you do that, and then it's a part of the stream. Obviously, you wouldn't do that in auto mode. You do it in live assist, but
yeah.
Again, that's one more thing that we're working on in response to this massive work from home. So, years ago, we talked about, the need for working on mobile devices, and we had a big push 10 years ago. And through some experiences we had with NextGen, so we made a native application in iOS that I know you've talked about in your sessions, and through that, it's just the maintenance of that and the difficulty of keeping it updated, and then demand for Android, and Windows has a phone and all this. I just said, I want to make HTML5 is very mature. Let's just make a web app that supports all of this stuff, and then you can run it on anything. Mm-hmm. And we've also got some very major clients that want to work in Mac exclusively, so they don't want to have a Windows box anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to give them an opportunity. So everything we've done since then has been put it in a web page, in a web app. And so we put out the To-Go initiative, and you've done a great job of showing, what you can do in Zetta To Go, Selector To Go, Acquire To Go, these web applications that give you some pretty powerful functionality in there. So we're just sort of taking those concepts and putting it into the cloud application as well. But so we're kind of founded in the ability to do all these things, but there were a couple of things that we saw early on in this big lockdown that we could add to our products to, provide even more value to what's going on. So those are two big things that are going on.
Yeah, those are big things.
Where I see by the end of the year is we're going to continue to bring functionality in that exists in Zetta, and also everything that we bring in has to be rethought for cloud, right? So, you can't just say, okay, I want all of the features of Zetta, because you actually don't want all of the features of Zetta. There's certain things that are relevant for site to site. Mm-hmm. And if you've got all your stations in one database, you don't have that. Things like auto load, we're not going to watch a local file folder and bring files in. We have to rethink, how do you get content in bulk? So just things like that. And then also one goal for the end of the year is also to take a console feed directly into Zetta Cloud. So instead of, this collaboration app that I showed, streaming and doing all of that, being able to do that from a console. So basically you go into a studio and it's able to connect to Zetta Cloud, and we know who you are and where you should be. And if your board's online, then we can get you straight into, securely, of course, get that audio, low latency into Zetta Cloud, and then get that audio mix minus back to you in the studio so you can hear what's going on in your radio station. That's so those are like the big initiatives, and there's a lot of little ones in there, particularly around G Selector. Mm-hmm. Some stuff that we've added recently is an integration to G Selector. So as long as the cloud infrastructure can get to your G Selector instance, and one other thing that we're working on short term is bringing more G Selector functionality into Zetta Cloud, so the lines are blurring between what's the play out and what's the scheduling system. It's all going to come together as one application.
Yeah, that's so cool. So just to recap here, so we're talking about, for those who are just chiming in our Facebook Live feed, yes, we are taking comments. Chip, I do have some comments and questions for you in a second here.
Oh, good.
I want to give a shout out, because we are on Facebook Live. John, Gary, and Paulo for checking in. And then, of course, when this is our weekly session, we're doing this twice a week. Mondays and Tuesdays we kind of float, and Thursdays are every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be on live here, answering questions for you, talking about workflows, and showing you some really cool features. Today we're joined by Chip. He's our CTO. We've been talking about kind of Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. In case you just missed it, you're going to want to rewind a little bit here, because we had some really cool features Chip was talking about, including voice tracking from Zetta Cloud to your Zetta proper. Talking about a live stream conference app using our streaming provider Revma. That's in there as well. And then also talking about some G Selector functionality too. So some really, really cool things. We'll recap those at the end of our session here. Let's get some questions. I'll go in order here. Raul was saying, Chip, are you leveraging on machine learning or artificial intelligence somehow, or are we planning to make Zetta even more powerful and efficient than it currently is?
Certainly. And the most immediate thought for that stuff has been, systems monitoring to make sure we've got uptime. So one of the new things that is coming, that's already been coded and we're testing right now in our staging environment that I mentioned, is redundant players. So you can see in here, if I break this up, we've got actually two players that are part of this cluster. They're both playing the same thing at the same time. And if we encounter a cluster that's gone down, we can respond to that and basically use AI to help self-heal the system. So we can find broken parts of the system, or maybe even things that are sort of intermittent. Maybe they're getting ready to fail, and we can fail certain components and fail over to other parts of the system. Certainly, when I talk about bringing music scheduling in, there's things that we can do in AI to help users So I guess one of the things that we encounter in Playout and music scheduling a lot is users, what I would consider wasting time repeating instructions to the computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every day at 12:30, it does this one thing. It puts in this one station ID, and I don't want it to do that. Or it always puts these two things back to back. And where I see AI going is not getting in the way of the user, but learning from the user to say, oh, you always do this when this happens. Maybe we should not do that thing. And then you can focus your efforts on other parts of your job and not fixing the computer's, tendency to do this one thing, because the computer's doing what it thinks is the right thing. But ultimately it's the humans that are in control, and we need to be able to help facilitate the sound of the radio station according to the user. So those are the types of things that I sort of see AI helping with quite a bit.
Did you want to? I'm just curious. I know that we had that feature in Zeta proper with the script translator. I know that's my layman's way of saying it, but
what about it?
Did you? I don't know if you want to. We want to mention that at all. I know that we. Sure.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty cool tool. I don't know how many clients are using it. We announced it at a couple of trade shows ago, but yeah, we're and I guess that's a really good point that I kind of, for some reason, I don't think of AI and speech to text, but it really is. And I really kind of focus in on the machine learning things. And but yeah, you're absolutely right. We're poised to bring in, because once everything's in the cloud, then we can start adding services to this whole thing, developing a marketplace to be able to say, oh, you want to transcribe all of your commercials or all of your voice tracks, and either stick the text on them or take a look at the text for certain business rules that are being violated and alert, or even inhibit audio for playing if you see certain words that you've told your staff not to use. Mm-hmm. Things like that. I mean, certainly are also in the AI realm. But to your point about the voice tracking thing, yeah, that's still around. It's still available. Basically, it's a plugin that you can put into Zeta that will take all of your recorded voice tracks and transcribe them for you, and then update the Zeta proper, as you say, voice track with the text from the voice track, and you can see it on screen if you want to. You can even search for things in the text if you wanted to find things that have been said.
Yeah, there's those things there too. So we can elaborate more if we want on those down the road. So can we, continuing down on the questions here, Henrik was saying, right now it seems like Zeta is syncing from local to cloud, like a backup, but in the future it might be reverse. Zeta Cloud, the main DB, said the PC runs Zeta in the studio, retrieves audio and data from the cloud. Is that the goal?
Our goal is to create tools that allow our clients to do wonderful things. So yeah, I mean, that's absolutely something that is a definite possibility even right now. So if you were to take the disaster recovery Zeta to Zeta Cloud model, if you go get rid of, and our product manager, Martin Blazek, has demonstrated this, if you go get rid of all of your audio assets locally on the server, you're not going off the air if you've got Zeta Cloud connected, because if Zeta encounters, it's basically one of the content stores for Zeta. So if you get rid of all the audio on all your content stores locally, Zeta is just going to start pulling that audio from Zeta Cloud and keep playing. So we already kind of have that going on. Plus, I mentioned the voice track syncing back, but you're absolutely right, Henrik. The future is more and more of this back and forth. So you could control a local on-prem system from Zeta Cloud if you chose to. And I think that helps broadcasters who, like I mentioned earlier with the hard cassette and, cart
Mm-hmm. The vital
mentality,
experience, yeah.
not wanting to get that up. If you wanted to have, or if there was a lot at stake for your radio station financially by, and you wanted to maintain as little risk as possible, having a full-on Zetta with a full-on Zetta Cloud, that provides a great deal of redundancy, and allows you to try out the cloud, and see how it works and synchronize things back and forth. And what that I think gets for some broadcasters is they have their big money, big market radio station that they want to make sure is got something in the studio that we're playing from, but also allows you to take that content and create new streams. So creating 100 streams that are variations of formats that you've got becomes quite easy because all the content's already there. You just need another schedule to run it. So yeah, I mean, just going back and forth between the two, using Zetta as a production tool as well. So now you can have production people that are anywhere. And if you've got 3 commercials that need to be dubbed, you just give them a sign-in, secure Okta sign-in to Zetta Cloud, and have them update the audio. And based on user rights, that's all they can do. They can't go in and do anything with your radio station. So it's a nice way to distribute the work without adding more risk of what these people can get into. If they're only trusted with commercials, that's all they get to.
Yeah. And I think you were saying it earlier, I think it's a good point to make. There's where we are right now with Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery, and talking about with disaster recovery, all of your assets, the audio, the metadata, the logs, and SQL backups, those get sent to Zetta Cloud. And I've always been saying, think of it as another market. It's a separate market radio station. We use RCS's site replication to share and send that data and that audio across. And then when there is a disaster, we enable Zetta Cloud from your phone, and we restore whatever we have back at the station. When that's up and running, we take the SQL backups from Zetta Cloud and restore it on, recreating the environment, and then essentially shutting down Zetta Cloud because we don't need the playout anymore. So we see that kind of back and forth in regards to metadata, audio, logs, and backups. And you were saying beforehand, one of the tools we're developing too is the voice track option. So you can have multiple users will have a login and a password. Again, this is a URL, as Chip was saying earlier. We're trying to stay away from, I have Windows, I have a Mac, I have this. By using a URL, it's more of a way to have multiple users, no matter what the endpoint is, to access the data. And then from there, we can go in and create some voice tracks and send that to Zetta proper. That, of course, was Chip was saying coming down the pipeline. Also things like that live stream that Chip was showing with Revma and our conference app, getting multiple inputs into one location. Thanks, Chip. That's the Revma conference app we were talking about. And again, you can invite multiple sources, multiple people into one conference room, and then have that broadcast over Zetta Cloud as well. And so, yeah, I think Henrik, you're definitely seeing that, as Chip was saying, that blend of having Zetta Cloud and having the flexibility to go online remotely from multiple locations with multiple users, but still maintaining that local station database. That's also in there as well. And one point I want to reiterate in case you came in late, Chip was talking about earlier, the idea that we're really taking into account here at RCS the amount of what the workflow is and how it applies to your situation. And Chip gave an example earlier that he had somebody needed a station, and it just so happened that it worked out perfectly with Zetta Cloud, and he had the station up and running in 30 minutes. Whereas you might need, multi-site voice tracking, for example, for Zetta proper. You might need that for certain clients and certain users and certain talent, whereas Zetta Cloud could help you in that, to where we create that blend where some users voice track with Zetta Cloud for the stations in Zetta proper too. Did I translate that well enough, Chip?
Yeah, very well.
I thought I'd give you a little break here to catch your breath.
Sure.
Keep going down the line. We got a bunch of questions here, Chip. So
okay.
I'm gonna piggyback this. So Tom was saying how easy it is to take your existing Zetta station and push it to Zetta Cloud. Stan, both Tom over in support and Stan did reply. Just he said very easy. If you're using Zeta replication technology, you define your cloud as if it was another building, another city, thus the market, and everything will automatically sync permanently. Did you want to elaborate on that at all, or did Stan nail it?
I think, as usual, Stan nailed it.
But yes, for those who are curious about how that process works, it is very, very easy, and RCS will help you on that process as well. So if you are curious about Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery, don't forget, when new signups, we'll throw in a free Zeta to Go license, which is, again, treated as a seat. Multiple users can access one seat. It's really, really cool. So if you're interested in getting both Zeta to Go with a license, with your backup and reliability of Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery, definitely want to reach out to your local RCS sales rep. And again, we will help you with that process, configuring it. It is very easy. Continuing down here, we have Sean was asking, curious, how do you handle real-time updates? If someone is making a change, will everyone see their changes immediately or after a refresh?
So I assume we're talking completely Zeta Cloud.
I would assume so, yeah.
Because, I mean, actually saving it in Zeta and getting it to Zeta Cloud is fairly fast as well. But certainly, if you make a change in the application, every user in the system will see that change immediately. And in fact, it's even better than it is in Zeta, in that if I'm making a config change, for example, but the same applies to assets as well. If I'm in here making config changes and somebody else makes a change to the station that I'm changing, you get a little pop-up that says, so-and-so changed configuration on the screen, and it will actually update the UI. But we do that so that you can see that what you're working on was changed while you're also in there. And that helps with having stale data issues. A lot of times when applications are written, you pull the data, let the user do something with it, and then you save that snapshot of the data essentially back to the database. And if somebody else makes a change, you can get into this condition where it's the last one in wins. So now we could think about some locking mechanisms to keep this from happening, but I think the places where people are working on the exact same atomic level of Zeta Cloud is probably pretty limited. But you might have somebody that's in, looking at a song, maybe wanting to change a category while somebody's cleaning up a title. All that stuff can happen, and you see all that stuff changing, and you're getting notification. I also wanted to quickly, Nate, just kind of come back to Tom's comment about setting up Zeta Cloud. I don't know if you've covered how that happens mechanically. So it's one thing for us who are very familiar with it to say it's easy, right? But as a new user, you might challenge, okay, how easy really is it?
Gotcha.
This is how the process works. When we set up a new Zeta Cloud account, we give the user an admin account to Zeta Cloud, and that's their credentials to sign into Zeta Cloud, upon which you see a screen very similar to what I have here. So you can see my name here, and I've signed in as myself here using an email address and a password, which RCS does not know. It's secure via Okta, which is a third-party authentication management system. Every playout system I've been involved in, and I've been involved in a few playout systems, Audio Wizard, NextGen, 101, and Zeta, and now Zeta Cloud, every one of those has had its own user management system. So we, as developers, have created give us a username and give us a password, and then we let you into the system. And that is not a business that we want to be in, really. I mean, particularly when we're getting into something that's as exposed as the cloud. When I talked to my cloud architect, Justin, who we hired to help build all this stuff, we looked at options and we settled in on Okta. So Okta is a company who gets paid to manage all of that stuff. So security problems come out there, it's their job to fix that stuff. It's, we don't have to go write code. We just have to enjoy the fact that they've deployed a change which automatically fixes everything. Anyway, we give you a username and password. You go into Zeta, you set up a new site for Site Rep, which is a Zeta Cloud site itself, which is just, it's a toggle in the newer versions of Zeta. You plug in that username and password, and regardless of where you are in the world, we know not only where you belong, but which system you're in. So that's important because we have, for latency purposes, we've got a system in Europe, we've got a system in Asia Pac, we have one in the US, in addition to our other environments. So you wouldn't you wouldn't want to try to get to the and I've done this back before we had all these clusters. I did a tour last year where I went to Australia and did demos for some of our big broadcasters down there. And I tried to do demos there, and they worked, but they were always going across, the Pacific to get to the U.S. And it was not a great experience. It wasn't horrible, but since I came back from that trip and prioritized building out all these other clusters, and that's it, username, password, and then you're in, and you're immediately starting to sync data with Zetta Cloud. You're done. Mm-hmm. You can go sign into the webpage and see everything. So I wanted to sort of jump on that. It's easy.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of talk about how easy it truly is.
And by the way, one thing I wrote this down, I forgot to mention it, and back to Henrik's point about the blend between Zetta proper, I say Zetta proper, but Zetta and Zetta Cloud is also, like, for example, we were saying earlier, and Martin has demonstrated this in regards to your audio content stores, having that audio that's saved locally. If something happens, and let's just say, I don't know, the example we gave was somebody goes rogue and deletes an audio file for whatever reason. Zetta will look at all of the content stores, including the Zetta Cloud content store. Because remember, when I create a brand new piece of audio, that's replicated instantly to Zetta Cloud. So there's kind of two copies of the same file. If the local Zetta can't see that asset, Zetta knows to look to Zetta Cloud's content store, see that audio file, and bring it back into the schedule too. I want to make a point of that.
And also that works if you do get attacked by some crypto locker thing, mm-hmm. and your files locally get corrupted, and you don't know which ones are corrupted. With this in place, you can just go delete everything and just restore it from the cloud.
Yeah.
So it's, I want to make sure it's understood. It's not just sort of a file watcher where we look at the folders, and if the audio updates, then we push it to the cloud. No, it has to go through an ingest process in Zetta to get to the cloud.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do a little check-in here because we've been chatting for a while here. So we got Nate, as always. I'm joined today by Chip Jellison. He's our CTO of RCS. And he's the brains behind a lot of our software, including Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. We've had a great time so far chatting about Zetta Cloud and where it's going and all of that. So if you have any questions you want to comment below, feel free to do that. We also have an email, live@rcsworks.com, or you can always direct message us and DM us as well. We'll talk about those too. So we kind of been talking a lot about Zetta Cloud. We'll continue to talk about Zetta Cloud, but if you do want any questions in regards to Zetta or Zetta to Go, feel free to chime in on those two. We can definitely talk about Zetta and Zetta to Go if you want to. Checking in too, saying hi to Ben, who is checking in. So again, if you have any comments, let us know. We'll answer those comments and questions for Chip here. Again, Chip, thanks for joining us. This has been a lot of fun so far. So yeah. We covered so far kind of what led us to Zetta Cloud as RCS as a company. We talked about kind of the future, where we're kind of ending up, where we're going to end up at the end of the year. We talked about some cool new features in regards to voice tracking from Zetta Cloud and sending that to Zetta proper, as well as a live stream using Revma's conference app and a couple other features there too. What do you say we dive into Zetta Cloud itself, and what are some, I always like asking this question for RCS, developers, what's something that you've either created for Zetta Cloud or seen in Zetta Cloud that you feel as a broadcaster is a really cool function as part of the software?
Well, I think it's a really hard question to answer from the perspective of we're sort of using Zetta itself mm-hmm. as the template to build this system on, right? So it's It's already a system that, I was involved in early on. We hired Martin Blazik to take over as product manager, and he took like any decent ideas I had in there. He's just like exploded them. So, I mean, Zetta itself is a big footprint to try to make up for. But I think as a broadcaster, the thing I think that we have the ability to do in here that is a little more difficult to do in Zetta, just because you've got hardware constraints and all of that. Well, I guess there's two things that come to mind as a broadcaster. One is just the player redundancy. So maximum uptime. I'm going to show you my station here. So in the station definition here, I am saying that I'm saying here that I've got these number of players, and I can keep adding them. If I want to go through the cost of doing this, I can create as many players as I want. I can put them in different data centers and have everything just continue to stream at the same time. So, I was talking to the tech leader of one of our clients, and he said he didn't want to be chasing nines, and I think that's a really good way of saying it. We're not saying how many nines is the system. We need this system to be up all the time, 100%. So that's what we're trying to do here. And in my history of running development teams, and you're very kind to say I'm the brains here. Like, the brains is hiring really smart people and getting out of their way. I'll take credit for that part. But I've always thought about the playout system as being an employee of your radio station. So every time a client buys our software, I think of it as they're basically hiring my software to do work for their radio station. And if it's not doing good work, then it needs to be reprimanded, and we need to deal with that situation. It really bothers me when I go to trade shows and I talk to clients and they say, oh, Zetta's great, but every once in a while it does this one thing, and I know exactly what that one thing is, and here's how you can avoid it. But they'd put up with it because the system overall is great. It just does this one thing, and it's like, you should really contact support, even though it's not a major thing. They can help you with this, and get that one niggling thing that when you talk about Zetta out of your brain, and then it's great. And from the same perspective, I've had other playout systems in my radio career, and some of those systems needed to be fired. It's just they weren't doing a good job, and I never wanted to be that system that a radio owner should want to fire. So, maximum uptime is certainly top of mind. And I think the other thing as a broadcaster is just, and this comes to it's not just the mega groups. Even a modest owner who might have 12 stations or 3 stations or even just 2 stations, just having everything in one place so it can be updated. You can share content like never before. Like, even site to site, is a really cool feature. But just imagine not even having to think about, that's over in site B. It's just in one database. It's all here. It's all real time. And to the point somebody brought up, it's everything's getting updated in the system real time, no matter where you are. So if you've got users in California and users in Florida who are all updating things at the same time, everybody has a real time view of what's going on here. One of the cornerstones of all the playout systems that we've done has been really good messaging, is sort of the industry term. It's that messaging helps when Nate and I both go into a system and make changes, knowing what those changes are and being able to deal with those changes. Without good messaging, you can't really do that well.
So let's, I feel like we have our own time limit here. We have about 10 minutes left to kind of talk about some things.
I told you I could talk about this stuff all day.
Listen, me too. I know we were joking about how it's kind of almost NAB week in our brains and we're not there. And I was joking with a shout out to Di and Corey, who are helping me with the Facebook feeds and all that. We were joking around and we had a kind of a brainstorming session when all of this kind of quarantine went down. And I was like, hey, listen, I was planning on talking for 10 hours straight for a week. So you point me in front of something, I'll just talk. So let's how about we recap a little bit of what we talked about today. Just for those who know, if you're viewing it right now live, this will be available on our Facebook page. We're also going to put it on our RCS blog as well, so you can access this video later. So those are two sources. Again, just to recap once again, as always, we're here twice a week for the quarantine. I feel like we're going to be doing this for the foreseeable future. So just be aware that we'll probably do either Monday or Tuesdays, usually our floating days, and then Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we'll be here. And we want to keep it really open for our RCS clients. So if you have, let's say, a certain workflow that you want to discuss or some options you didn't know was available to you, but also, as Chip was saying, if you have that one subtle nuance where you're kind of like, it's this one thing, I'm not really okay with it, but whatever, it's one thing. Reach out to RCS support. They're phenomenal to help you out. You can also email support@rcsworks.com if you wanted to. Otherwise, if you got some questions, throw it out to us here on one of our Facebook Lives. We'll be more than happy to either give you some advice, get you in the right direction, or I've done a lot of this so far is I'll have direct messages after the show is over and talk to some of our clients about certain workflows. So that's there too. So kind of recapping here, again, we're with Chip, our CTO of RCS. So we were talking about first kind of why the cloud, and we were talking about how we wanted to have multiple users from multiple locations with multiple operating systems or your cell phone or whatever it is, all connecting in one space. That led us to Zetta Cloud. Then we were talking about essentially, and by the way, Chip, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time if you want to elaborate on this. And then talking about kind of where we're going with Zetta Cloud and Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. Chip was showcasing some really cool features. For example, I don't know if you want to talk about the voice tracker that you have open here, Chip, about setting it Zetta proper.
Sure. Can touch on that again. So this is, I realized that I'd been talking for 50 minutes now and hadn't really shown all that much in the way of features, but these really do exist. So the idea is that if you've got Zetta and Zetta Cloud synchronized, that we could create a portal, a voice tracking portal for you out of your Zetta Cloud instance. So you can have your talent come in, do their voice tracks. When they click save, it saves into the cloud, of course, and it's all in an S3 bucket in Amazon. But a copy is then sent to Zetta without VPNs, without port forwarding or anything like that. It's just Zetta pulls it down, puts it in place, and it airs.
And Chip, are we, I know it's still early stages of this, but would that include the transitions with the...
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So everything we need to place that voice track properly will be included, as if it came from another site, which it really did, but the site is, a secure cloud-based site.
And just, I'm assuming people have the same question that I do. In regards to using site rep, they would have the same intro. The heads and tails would be the same song because you're getting that data via site rep from the Zetta proper log, correct?
Yep, absolutely. So it's the same schedule, same assets, everything. So we'll pull in the heads and tails, or tops and tails, as they say in certain parts of the world. Bring them in, and I mean, it operates very, very similarly to how Zetta to Go might, because in fact it was the same developer who wrote this, brought in a lot of the Zetta to Go stuff that already existed. So that's another way that we've been able to rapidly develop this is we have borrowed things from Zetta.
And so essentially in that circumstance, treat almost like Zetta Cloud-based disaster recovery. All of your logs, metadata, audio gets sent to Zetta Cloud. From there, we can then voice track, and that voice track gets sent back to your Zetta. That's what Chip's doing here is he's just recording a voice track in Zetta Cloud. You can see, just for those who are watching now, we have two modules open. Zetta Cloud's just like Zetta to Go and Zetta. In regards, we have two modules open. From the very top left, you can see playlist, and then the bottom one here is voice tracker. And you can say you also have layouts, so you have up to 6 different layouts. Don't forget about that set station all modules. So if you do have multiple stations, you don't have to go to each station individually and change the station. You can essentially pull up your country station, voice track, then go to set station all modules, and then switch over to your classic rock station and voice track from there too. Let's see. So anything else you want to show if you're jumping to station config, Chip?
Yeah. Just a couple of real brief things that, aren't in production or maybe in there, but maybe nobody's noticed. I mean, we've got G Selector integration, which I mentioned before. We just finished adding ETM fill.
Oh, yeah, right.
The idea is that you can go tag your audio assets that you want to use in fill with a certain tag, and then list out what tags you want considered for this station for fill. We've also got a thing called emergency playlist. We had a client that wanted to basically, they had a guest DJ channel. So they had a recurring 3-hour show basically with all the discrete parts, with DJ, with the singer doing voice tracks basically between these things. It's 3 hours. They put it into one playlist, and that station is nothing more than just that on a loop that they don't touch.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things. One of the other things that's kind of interesting about Zetta Cloud that's really flexible is in Zetta, we had custom asset types available to us, but we've taken that concept a little bit further and allowed you to also define the characteristics of an asset. So in Zetta, links are links, songs are songs, spots are spots, and those are kind of like pre-canned, we like to call them, and they have certain inherited attributes within the system. And you can have custom types, but you can't really have those custom types take on attributes like one of the pre-canned ones. And so what we've done is we've made it so that any asset type can act like a song, or act like a spot, or act like, and it can be called whatever you wanted to call it, which is really flexible. So you can have an application of this might be that you might want to have Nate's voice tracks, which are just your voice tracks that you've recorded. Now you can filter using user and all that stuff. But if you wanted to just have yours in an asset type, in those hours, you could just schedule a Nate asset type, Nate voice track asset type, and it would behave like a voice track. You could have Christmas songs that are called Christmas songs in the system. So they're completely separate from the rest of your songs, but they act like songs. They're linked with G Selector just like songs, that whole thing. So those are just a few. I know we're running low on time here. I wanted to kind of do a shout out to some recent features that have creeped in there that are pretty cool.
Also want to talk about the Sound 4 and Omnia processing too. I don't think we've talked about that just yet.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Let me see if I've got. I was afraid of that.
So just we'll just summarize very briefly for time, but we do have Omnia and Sound 4 processing. It's station specific in Zetta Cloud. So if you wanted to have some processing done from Zetta Cloud, Jeff Ziegler has a great analogy of kind of using the bank versus the ATM in regards to if you wanted to have, let's just say, if you want to go to that one individual bank, you can deposit your checks. But if you have an ATM, there's multiple locations in which you can deposit your checks. So if you put the Sound 4 processing done at the station level in Zetta Cloud, no matter what the output is, you can have that processing associated with it. So just know that we have some both, it's built into Zetta Cloud, both Omnia and Sound 4, as well as we have some hardware options as well if you want to go down that road.
Yeah, and it's a licensable feature. You basically buy a license to this processing, and once enabled on your station, then you get, in the case of Sound 4, we've got this configuration screen where you can go nuts with all sorts of configurations and loading presets and all that stuff.
Yeah, so the sound processing. Let's see what else we want to review. We did the voice track. I was making
one
notes
other thing, Nate, is I mentioned the redundant players. If I go to staging, real quick, I can't really show you this in action because it's a hardware thing, but we also have the notion of what we call edge playout. And what that means is that we've got an AWS sequencer player running, but we also have a Sound 4 Impact, which is a 1RU sound. Its main job is a sound processor, but it's also running the Zetta Cloud sequencer and player inside of it. So it is also synchronized and creating your radio station inside that box So it's completely uncompressed right there at the transmitter site, as if it were being assembled in the AWS infrastructure.
Yeah.
And synchronized with what's going on.
That's cool. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of what else. I lost my train of thought in regards to recapping here. We had the live stream. If you want to show the live stream one last time as well.
Sure.
So again, to summarize that is we have, you see the live stream right there. We have Revma, which is what we have for our streaming provider. And there, Revma has what we call a conference app. And essentially is a meeting room that you'll have a microphone input source. You can invite additional users to that one meeting. And then that then connects to Zeta Cloud to essentially broadcast live. So you would have kind of the talk mode. Yeah, exactly. Put live insist, change the chain type to manual. Then you would fire the live stream. You can control everything from there. And then coming out of it, you would essentially fire the next element, putting Zeta back in auto mode or change the chain type, and then turn off the live stream. So if you want to have, let's say, a morning show, for example, a lot of talent. Me personally, Chip, I don't know if you want to comment on this, but one of the things that I've noticed from my experience with, the quarantine and social distancing and what that means for the future of radio, I mean, it does free up to have flexible talent in regards to, if something, for whatever reason, you have to be remote. For some reason, for me, the first thing was my paternity leave. That's just me. But, there's some options there in regards to if you need somebody who's outside to connect and you don't want to have a Comrex or some kind of hardware ISDN line, it's a great tool to add that user into the mix remotely.
Yeah, and you don't have to give them any special, credentials in order to get in. So you can do one-off. So if you've got, somebody that's in charge of FEMA that you want to, bring into your show, you can just give them this link. They hit it, and then they can be part of your broadcast.
And want to point out too, if you can hover over that phone in the top right, so just be aware for security reasons. I know everybody's always paranoid. You can't just jump into this live feed. So what happens is if let's say Chip invites me to this conference app, once I load that app up, I do have to give a name to specify. I give a reason for what's going on. So in case you want to take, I don't know, maybe live callers for whatever reason, you can give a reason they can chime in. But you'll see that phone on the top right. That will turn green and do kind of a little ring motion to let you know that there's a new user who wants to chime in. So just be aware that if you're worried about security purposes, I believe the conference app, every time you log out, log back in, it's a new guest link. And then from there, if I want to chime in, you do have to accept that user into there. So.
Yeah, it's got a hairball there.
It's all right. So then let's see here. So that was the conference app we talked about as well. And I liked Henrik's idea, and Chip, you were kind of expanding the fact that there's this blur between Zeta and Zeta Cloud. So if you want to kind of leave on that note, if there's anything else you want to kind of chime in with, it's very much this is talking about we have a lot of users who see Zeta Cloud and go, oh, that's great, it's automation in the cloud, I want to use it right now, let's go. And we're not exactly there yet. We're getting there. But you can definitely see that the bones and the foundation are there. But the workflows, you might find yourself, for one particular station, one scenario, that Zeta provides more of those enhancements, those features you need. Whereas, for Zeta Cloud, they could fill that cloud void by having, as I said beforehand, multiple users accessing it with no VPNs. So let's just final comments. Get your final comments in. If you want to check in for Chip. Chip, do you want to do kind of anything you want to summarize before we go? Anything you want to point out?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, really, there's a lot of features in here for playback right now, and we're adding more and more constantly. But I think as we continue to build these features, broadcasters are going to get more and more comfortable with workloads being shifted to the cloud, and I think there's going to be this sort of happy synergy of readiness of the industry and readiness of RCS to meet those advanced station requirements. So we've got some play out stuff that even systems that are on-prem system don't have for play out. For and it really kind of comes from the RCS, even going back to master control, some of the concepts that rolled into Zeta have rolled into Zeta Cloud, very programming centric ways to operate systems, right? Using ETMs and chain types and things like that to give you great power in being able to put these things together. And we're going to keep adding more and more features to this thing. Eventually we'll get closer to where Zeta's at, so we're doing all the big features that the majority needs, and then we'll get into the more niche features, but rethinking them for the cloud is really what we're doing there.
Absolutely. And we got to use the word synergy in our conference. So that was...
We did. You have to.
Bonus. Yes. Playing that at work bingo. All right. Well, Chip, I think we're good. Last 10 seconds of questions. I think we're good, though. Just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you coming on with us. This is great. And again, we're going to try to, Chip and I were just joking before this call about we're trying to, bring some people in, have some discussion, some conversation, and show you kind of what we're doing here at RCS. So really thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
So, all right. And there, look, Eric just liked the comment. So how's that? We'll end up with Eric liking the thing. So thanks, Eric. Thank everybody else. I'll see you probably on Tuesday. I'll send a Facebook invite to remind you on that. We'll talk about some stuff. Maybe we'll talk about it's been 2 sessions. Maybe we'll talk about some G Selector, because I haven't talked about that in about 2 sessions. Neil, thanks for checking in. And thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you, Chip.
Thanks.